The thing about being a paramedic is you learn to read warning signs. Elevated heart rate, shallow breathing, cold sweats, all indicators that something's about to go very wrong. What they don't teach you in EMT school is how to recognize those same symptoms in your marriage. My name is Colin Varrow, and I've been saving lives for 12 years. Turns out, I couldn't save my own. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. It started with the perfume. Tessa had worn the same vanilla scent since college, something called Sweet Dreams, that cost $8 at the drugstore. Then one Tuesday in March, I came home to find her smelling like a French garden after rain. When I asked about it, she shrugged and said Nicole had given her a sample. "It's called Betrayal," she said, not looking up from her laptop. I should have paid attention to the name. Tessa Rourde, she kept her maiden name for work, was everything I wasn't. Where I dealt with injuries and fractured limbs, she crafted marketing campaigns that convinced people they needed things they'd never heard of. She was sharp, polished, and could talk her way into or out of anything. I was the guy who showed up when talking stopped working. We'd been married 6 years, together for 8. Met at a hospital fundraiser where she was promoting some charity drive, and I was the token first responder they'd dragged in for photos. She laughed at my jokes about CPR being the ultimate pickup technique, and I fell for her smile like a rookie falling for a fake cardiac arrest call. The second warning sign was the gym bag. Not mine. I worked out at the fire station when I had time. This was a sleek black Nike bag that appeared in our bedroom closet, tucked behind Tessa's winter coats like it was hiding. "Whose bag is this?" I asked one morning, holding it up. "Mine," she said, applying mascara with surgical precision. "I joined that new place downtown, CrossFit Revolution." "Since when do you do CrossFit?" "Since I decided I needed a challenge." Her reflection met my eyes in the mirror. "You should try it sometime. Might help with that spare tire." I looked down at my stomach. 12 years of shift work and vending machine dinners had added some padding, sure, but I could still carry a 200-pound patient down 3 flights of stairs without breaking a sweat. The comment stung because it was meant to. The third sign was the phone calls. Hushed conversations that stopped when I entered the room. Late-night texts that made her smile in ways I hadn't seen in months. When I asked who was keeping her so entertained, she'd say it was work stuff or Nicole planning some girls' trip. But the real warning sign was the dinner party. Nicole Brennan had been Tessa's college roommate and remained her closest friend, a gossipy real estate agent who treated other people's business like her personal entertainment network. She'd invited us over for what she called a casual dinner with friends, which in Nicole speak meant she had news to share and wanted to watch everyone's reactions. The other guests were Brent Morrison, a gym rat who worked in tech support, and his girlfriend Kelly, a nurse I recognized from Boston General. We'd worked a few calls together. She was competent and didn't panic under pressure, which made her good people in my book. Nicole served salmon that was overcooked and wine that wasn't, keeping our glasses full while she orchestrated the conversation like a conductor leading an orchestra toward a crescendo. "So, Tessa," she said, cutting into her fish with theatrical precision, "how's work been? Any interesting reunions lately?" I felt Tessa tense beside me, but her smile never wavered. "Just the usual corporate drama. You know how it is." "Oh, I bet." Nicole's grin was sharp enough to perform surgery, especially when old flames come back to town. Must bring back memories. "What old flames?" I asked, because somebody had to. Nicole's eyes lit up like she'd been waiting for that exact question. "Didn't Tessa tell you? Patrick Devlin is back in Boston. He's working at Morrison & Associates now, that big marketing firm downtown. You remember Rick, don't you, Tessa? You two were quite the item back in the day." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Tessa's fork clinked against her plate as she set it down carefully. "That was a long time ago," she said. ancient history. Not that ancient, Nicole laughed. What was it? 3 years? 4? Right before you met Colin, if I remember correctly. 3.5, Tessa corrected, then caught herself. I mean, I don't really remember. It wasn't important. But she did remember. I could see it in the way her jaw tightened, the way she reached for her wine glass and drained half of it in one gulp. These were tells I'd learned to read over 6 years of marriage, little signs that Tessa was lying. He's doing well for himself, Nicole continued, oblivious to or ignoring the tension she was creating. Drives an Audi now, silver, very nice. I saw him at Starbucks last week looking good, really good. Still works out religiously, from what I could tell. Good for him, I said, trying to keep my voice neutral. You should reach out, Nicole said to Tessa. You know, for closure. Sometimes it's good to reconnect with people from your past, especially when things ended. Well, the way they did. How did they end? I asked. The silence that followed was loud enough to wake anyone. Nicole realized she'd said too much. Tessa looked like she wanted to crawl under the table. Brent suddenly found his salmon fascinating, and Kelly shot me a look that said she was as uncomfortable as I was. It's not important, Tessa said finally. Can we talk about something else? But the damage was done. The rest of dinner passed in stilted conversation about work and weather, but my mind was elsewhere, processing what I'd learned. Patrick Devlin, Rick, an ex-boyfriend whose existence had never been mentioned in 8 years together. A relationship that had ended badly enough that Nicole thought it needed closure. That night, lying in bed while Tessa pretended to sleep, I stared at the ceiling and tried to make sense of the pieces. The new perfume, the gym bag, the late-night phone calls, an ex-boyfriend back in town. In emergency medicine, we have a saying, when you hear hoofbeats, think horses, not zebras. The most obvious explanation is usually the right one. But sometimes, when all the symptoms point in the same direction, you have to accept the diagnosis you don't want to make. I was losing my wife. The question was, what was I going to do about it? 3 days after the dinner party, I started paying attention. Really paying attention. When you work in emergency medicine, you develop an eye for details others miss. The slight discoloration that indicates internal bleeding, the way someone holds their arm that suggests a fracture, the look in their eyes that tells you they're lying about how they got hurt. Tessa was showing all the signs of someone living a double life. She started working late more often, coming home after 9 with stories about client presentations and strategy meetings. Her phone was always face down now, and she'd started taking it with her to the bathroom. The gym bag appeared and disappeared on a schedule I couldn't quite figure out, but it was never there on the nights she claimed to be working late. On Friday, she announced she was going out for drinks with the girls. Which girls? I asked, not looking up from my case report. Nicole, obviously, and Sarah from accounting, maybe Jennifer if she can get a babysitter. Have fun, I said. Don't do anything I wouldn't do. She kissed the top of my head, a perfunctory gesture that felt more like checking off a box than showing affection. Don't wait up. We might make a night of it. After she left, I sat in our apartment and tried to focus on paperwork. We'd had a busy shift. 2 cardiac arrests, a motorcycle accident, and a domestic dispute that turned into a stabbing. Normal Tuesday stuff. But I couldn't concentrate. Every time I tried to read, I heard Nicole's voice. Sometimes it's good to reconnect with people from your past, especially when things ended, well, the way they did. At 10:30, my phone buzzed. A text from Tessa. Having so much fun. Might crash at Nicole's. Love you. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I put on my jacket and went for a drive. I didn't plan to follow her. At least that's what I told myself. I was just restless, needed some air, maybe I'd grab a coffee and drive around for a while. It wasn't until I found myself parked across from Murphy's Tavern, Nicole's favorite bar, that I admitted what I was really doing. Tessa's car wasn't there. I drove to 3 more bars in the area. No sign of her Honda Civic. Then I remembered something Nicole had said at dinner. Drives an Audi now. Silver. Very nice. The Marriott downtown had a parking garage attached to it. 5 levels of concrete and shadows where people went to hide things they didn't want seen. I'd been there before on calls, heart attacks in hotel rooms, overdoses in stairwells, the occasional suicide attempt from the upper levels. I found them on level 3. Tessa's Honda was parked next to a silver Audi A4. Through the rear window of the sedan, I could see 2 figures in the front seat, silhouetted against the garage's fluorescent lighting. They were talking, heads close together, in a way that suggested intimacy. As I watched from behind a concrete pillar, the driver's side door opened and a man got out. Patrick Devlin looked exactly like the kind of guy who would drive an Audi and work out religiously. Tall, broad-shouldered, with the kind of carefully maintained stubble that probably required more grooming products than Tessa owned. He walked around to the passenger side and opened Tessa's door like a gentleman. They stood there for a moment, talking quietly. Then he cupped her face in his hands and kissed her. It wasn't a friendly peck. It wasn't a goodbye between old friends kiss. It was the kind of kiss that said they'd been doing this for a while and planned to keep doing it. I took pictures. My phone camera wasn't great in low light, but it was good enough. I got shots of them kissing, of him walking her back to her car, of their license plates. When they finally separated and drove off in different directions, I sat in my truck for another 20 minutes, staring at the photos and trying to process what I'd just witnessed. My wife was cheating on me with her ex-boyfriend. The next morning, Tessa came home at 8:30 with coffee and bagels from our favorite place, a peace offering disguised as a thoughtful gesture. "How was girls' night?" I asked, accepting the coffee. "Oh, you know how it is with Nicole. 1 drink turns into 5, and before you know it, we're solving all the world's problems." She sat down across from me at our small kitchen table, looking perfectly composed. "Sorry I didn't make it home. I was too tired to drive safely." "Smart choice," I said. "Safety first." She smiled and reached across to squeeze my hand. "I love that you worry about me." I squeezed back, studying her face. She looked me right in the eye, no tells, no nervous gestures. She was either a better liar than I'd given her credit for, or she'd had practice. "How's Nicole doing?" I asked. "Same as always. She's seeing someone new, some guy she met at a real estate conference. She's convinced he's the one. But you know Nicole." "What about the others? Sarah and Jennifer?" "Oh, they couldn't make it after all. Just me and Nicole in the end." Another lie, delivered without hesitation. I nodded and smiled and played the part of the trusting husband while inside. Something cold and calculating was taking shape. That afternoon, while Tessa was at her real gym class, I checked. She really did go to CrossFit Revolution. I made an appointment with a lawyer. David Ogilvy had handled the legal work when we bought our apartment. He was a thin, precise man who spoke in measured sentences and charged by the hour. His office smelled like leather and disappointment. "Divorce proceedings," he said, reviewing the notes I'd given him. "Adultery as grounds. You have evidence?" I showed him the photos on my phone. He studied them with the detached interest of a medical examiner reviewing autopsy results. "These are good," he said. "Clear faces, identifiable location, intimate behavior. Do you have anything else? Financial records, communications, witnesses?" "Not yet, but I can get them." "Don't do anything illegal," he warned. "No hacking phones or email accounts, no trespassing. Anything obtained illegally won't be admissible and could hurt your case." "I understand." "Good." He leaned back in his chair. "Now let's talk about assets. You own the apartment jointly?" "Yes." "Any children?" "No." "Retirement accounts? Investments?" I gave him the rundown. We weren't rich, but we weren't poor either. The apartment was worth about $400,000. I had a pension through the city. She had a 401k through her company. Joint savings account with about $30,000 in it. She'll likely claim half of everything, Ogilvy said. The apartment, your pension, savings. Massachusetts is an equitable distribution state, which means the court tries to divide assets fairly, not necessarily equally. Your evidence of adultery could work in your favor, but don't expect to keep everything. What if I file first? Smart thinking. The petitioner, the person who files first, gets to control the narrative to some extent. You set the terms, choose the timeline. It also shows the court that you're the injured party taking action, not someone responding defensively. How long does the process take? Depends on how cooperative she is. If she contests it, could be 6 months to a year. If she agrees to the terms, he shrugged. A few months. I thanked him and left with a retainer agreement and a plan. But as I drove home, I realized I didn't just want a divorce. I wanted her to understand what she'd thrown away. I wanted her to feel the same humiliation and betrayal she'd put me through. I wanted revenge. The beautiful thing about being a paramedic is that people trust you. We're the guys who show up when everything's gone wrong, who stay calm in chaos, who save lives without asking questions. We're heroes, in a small-town, blue-collar kind of way. That reputation can be a powerful weapon when someone tries to destroy your life. Tessa filed for divorce first. I came home from a double shift to find the papers on our kitchen table, along with a note explaining that she'd moved in with Nicole temporarily while we worked things out. She was asking for half of everything: the apartment, my pension, savings, plus alimony based on her reduced earning potential due to career sacrifices made for the marriage. Career sacrifices. That was rich, considering she made more money than I did and had never turned down a promotion or transfer for my sake. I called Ogilvy immediately. She beat you to it, he said after I read him the papers. But that might actually work in our favor. Look at what she's asking for. It's aggressive, bordering on greedy. Makes her look like the bad guy, especially when we present our evidence. What's our next move? We respond with a counter-petition, deny her claims, present evidence of adultery, and ask for our own division of assets. We'll also request that she be responsible for her own legal fees due to marital misconduct. And then? Then we go to war. The first shot was fired at Tessa's workplace. Morrison & Associates was a mid-sized marketing firm that prided itself on family values and corporate integrity. They had a strict policy about workplace relationships and an even stricter one about affairs between employees. I knew this because I'd done my homework. Patrick Devlin had been hired as a senior account manager 3 months ago, right around the time Tessa started working late and wearing new perfume. According to the company directory, they worked on several of the same accounts. According to their social media policies, employees were expected to maintain professional relationships and avoid conflicts of interest. I printed out the photos from the parking garage, along with a timeline of Tessa's late nights and Patrick's start date. Then I mailed everything to Morrison & Associates' HR department with a note explaining that I thought they should be aware of the situation. I didn't sign it. The second shot was fired at their social circle. Nicole might have been Tessa's best friend, but she was also the biggest gossip in Boston. All it took was one carefully placed phone call. "Colin!" Nicole's voice was bright with artificial cheer. "How are you holding up? Tessa told me about the separation. I'm so sorry." "Thanks, Nicole. It's been hard, you know. Finding out about the affair and everything." Silence. Then, "Affair? You didn't know? I thought Tessa would have told you. She's been seeing Patrick Devlin, her ex-boyfriend, the one you mentioned at dinner. I caught them together at the Marriott last week." "Oh my God. Colin, I had no idea. I mean, I knew they'd been talking, but I thought it was just closure, like I said. They've been talking?" Another pause. Nicole was realizing she'd said too much. Well, she mentioned running into him a few times. Coffee, you know, catching up." "How many times?" "I don't really remember." "Nicole, how many times?" Maybe more than a few. But Colin, I swear I didn't know it was serious. She said they were just friends, that she was trying to put the past to rest. By sleeping with him? She's sleeping with him? The shock in Nicole's voice sounded genuine. Either she really didn't know how far things had gone, or she was a better actress than I'd given her credit for. I have photos, I said quietly. From the hotel parking garage. They weren't just talking. Jesus. Colin, I'm so sorry. I never would have encouraged her to see him if I'd known. You encouraged her? Not like that. I just thought. She seemed so restless lately, so unhappy. I thought maybe talking to Patrick would help her figure out what she wanted. Turns out she did. I hung up before Nicole could say anything else. Within an hour, my phone was buzzing with texts from mutual friends who'd apparently been brought up to speed on the situation. By the end of the day, half of Boston knew that Tessa Rourde was cheating on her paramedic husband with her ex-boyfriend. The third shot was the most personal. I waited until Thursday evening when I knew Patrick would be at CrossFit Revolution. Tessa had mentioned his workout schedule during one of her fake stories about her own gym routine, not realizing she was giving me intelligence I could use. The gym was one of those trendy places with exposed brick walls and motivational quotes painted in aggressive fonts. Through the front window, I could see Patrick in the middle of a workout, lifting weights with the focused intensity of someone who treated fitness like a religion. His silver Audi was parked in the lot, gleaming under the streetlights. I'd brought supplies from work. Nothing illegal, just items that were readily available to any paramedic. Medical waste bags, biohazard stickers, a few expired IV bags filled with saline solution, and about 50 feet of plastic wrap from our equipment storage. It took me 20 minutes to completely wrap his car, not just the body, the entire vehicle from bumper to bumper, including the wheels and mirrors. When I was finished, it looked like a chrome sculpture covered in cellophane. Then I attached the medical waste bags to the door handles and windshield wipers, each one labeled with a biohazard sticker. On the windshield, I taped a note written in my neatest handwriting. Caution, hazardous affair, contents may be toxic to marriage. I was 3 blocks away when my phone rang. Unknown number. Hello? Is this Colin Varrow? The voice was male, angry, with a slight Boston accent. Depends who's asking. This is Patrick Devlin. We need to talk. Do we? You know damn well we do. What you did to my car? I don't know what you're talking about. Cut the shit. I know it was you. Can you prove it? Silence. Then, stay away from me. Stay away from my property. And stay away from Tessa. Tessa's my wife. Not for much longer. We'll see about that. I hung up and drove home, feeling better than I had in weeks. For the first time since this whole mess started, I wasn't the victim. I was fighting back, but I was just getting started. Patrick's wife called me on a Tuesday morning while I was restocking the ambulance between calls. Her name was Emily Devlin, and she had a proposition. We need to meet, she said without preamble. Today. I don't think that's a good idea. My husband is having an affair with your wife. I'd say we have plenty to talk about. She suggested a coffee shop in Brookline, neutral territory where neither of us was likely to run into anyone we knew. Emily turned out to be a small woman with sharp eyes and the kind of controlled anger that comes from years of practice. She was a nurse at Children's Hospital, which explained the clinical way she laid out her evidence. I've known for 6 weeks, she said, sliding a manila folder across the table. Credit card statements, phone records, hotel receipts. He's not very good at covering his tracks. I flipped through the documents. Patrick had been busy. Dinners at expensive restaurants, weekend trips to Cape Cod, charges at lingerie stores I was pretty sure Tessa hadn't been shopping at for my benefit. Why haven't you confronted him? Because I wanted to be sure, and because I wanted leverage. She sipped her coffee, studying me over the rim. You humiliated him with that car thing. He was furious. Good. He's also scared. He thinks you're unstable, dangerous. He's been talking about getting a restraining order. Let him try. I have a better idea. Emily leaned forward, lowering her voice. He keeps a gym locker at CrossFit Revolution. Locker 247. Combination is 0831. Our anniversary, the sentimental fool. He stores things there he doesn't want me to find. Photos, letters, probably some of those hotel key cards he likes to keep as trophies. Why are you telling me this? Because I want him destroyed, not just divorced, ruined. He humiliated me, flaunted his affair in front of our friends, made me look like an idiot. I want him to feel exactly as small as he made me feel. I studied her face. Emily Devlin wasn't just angry, she was calculating. Cold. In another life, she might have made a good paramedic. What do you want in return? Your wife's employment records. I want to know everything about her job, her schedule, her responsibilities. If she's been using company time and resources to conduct this affair, her employer should know about it. We shook hands across the table like generals signing a treaty. That evening, I paid a visit to CrossFit Revolution. The gym had a policy about guest passes. $20 for a day membership, no questions asked. The locker room was empty at 8 p.m., most of the serious athletes having finished their workouts hours earlier. Locker 247 was in the back corner, away from the main traffic flow. The combination Emily had given me worked on the first try. Inside, I found exactly what she'd promised, a collection of evidence that painted a clear picture of Patrick's extracurricular activities. Photos of him and Tessa at restaurants I couldn't afford. Love letters written in Tessa's careful handwriting, full of phrases like, "I've never felt this way before," and "You make me remember who I used to be." Hotel key cards from the Marriott, the Hilton, and a bed and breakfast in Salem that they'd apparently visited 3 times. But the real treasure was his phone. Patrick had left it charging in the locker while he worked out, a level of trust that was about to be seriously misplaced. I didn't have long before he finished his session, but I didn't need long. I just needed to send a few texts. The first went to Tessa. "Can't wait for this weekend in Vermont. Tell Colin you're visiting your sister again. Love you." The second went to his boss at Morrison & Associates. "Need to take Friday off for personal reasons. Tessa and I have something special planned." The third went to Emily. "Working late again tonight. Don't wait up. P.S. Found the perfect anniversary gift for my favorite mistress." I put the phone back exactly where I'd found it, locked the locker, and left through the emergency exit. By the time Patrick discovered what had happened, it would be too late to explain. The next morning, my phone rang at 6 a.m. Tessa's number. "What the hell did you do?" she screamed before I could say hello. "Good morning to you too. What are you talking about?" You know exactly what I'm talking about. Patrick's wife showed up at my office yesterday with photos and documents. HR wants to see me this afternoon. My boss is asking questions about my relationship with a client's account manager. Sounds like a problem. And then Patrick gets these mysterious texts from his phone that he swears he didn't send, but they're sitting right there in his message history. Technology is weird that way. "Colin, I know this was you. I don't know how, but I know." "Can you prove it?" The same question I'd asked Patrick, the same silence in response. "This isn't over," she said finally. "No," I agreed. "It's not." But I was winning. The final escalation came 3 days later, when Tessa tried to clean out our joint savings account. She'd moved fast, transferring $28,000 to her personal checking account while I was working a double shift. Unfortunately for her, I'd been expecting something like this. I'd frozen the account the day after she filed for divorce. The call from the bank manager was almost worth the entire ordeal. Apparently, Tessa had made quite a scene when her withdrawal was denied, demanding to speak to supervisors and threatening legal action. When they explained that both account holders had to approve major transactions during divorce proceedings, she'd accused them of discrimination and stormed out. But she wasn't done fighting. That night, She showed up at our apartment while I was sleeping. I woke up to the sound of someone moving around in the living room, and for a moment I thought we were being robbed. Then I heard her voice, talking quietly on the phone. "I just need to get a few things," she was saying. "Personal items. He can't stop me from taking my own belongings." I grabbed my phone and started recording, then crept to the bedroom door. Through the crack, I could see Tessa moving through our apartment with a flashlight, opening drawers and cabinets. She was stuffing items into a duffel bag, not clothes or personal mementos, but valuable things. My watch collection, her grandmother's jewelry, the emergency cash we kept in the kitchen. "Tessa," I said, stepping into the hallway. She spun around, caught in the act like a burglar in a spotlight. "Colin, I didn't think you were home." "This is still my home. What are you doing?" "Getting my things." "Those aren't your things." I nodded toward the bag. "That's my grandfather's watch, and our emergency fund. Everything in this apartment is half mine. The divorce papers don't give you the right to break in and steal things." "I didn't break in. I still have a key." "Not anymore." I held up my hand, showing her the new lock-bolt key I'd had made. "I changed the locks yesterday, which means you just committed breaking and entering." Her face went pale in the flashlight beam. "You can't prove—" I held up my phone, showing her the recording I'd been making. "Actually, I can." For a moment, we stood there in the dark hallway, two people who'd once promised to love each other forever, now facing off like enemies. Then Tessa's mask finally slipped. "You bastard," she whispered. "You self-righteous, pathetic bastard. Do you think this makes you the good guy? Do you think destroying my life makes you some kind of hero?" "I'm not destroying your life. You did that yourself." "I made one mistake." "You made a choice. Every day for months, you chose to lie to me, to cheat on me, to make me feel like I was crazy for noticing that something was wrong. You chose to file for divorce and try to take everything I've worked for. You chose to break into my home and steal from me." Tears were streaming down her face now, but I felt nothing. The man who'd loved her was gone, replaced by someone harder, colder, more calculating. "I loved you," she said. "No, you loved the idea of me. The safe choice. The guy who would always be there while you figured out what you really wanted." I walked to the front door and opened it. "Get out." "Colin, get out before I call the police." She left, taking only the clothes she was wearing. I watched from the window as she sat in her car for 10 minutes, crying into her hands. Then she drove away, and I went back to bed. But I wasn't done with her yet. The end came on a Friday night in May, exactly 2 months after the dinner party, where this all began. The setting was perfect, the same hotel parking garage where I'd first caught them together, the scene of the original crime. Emily had arranged it all. "He thinks he's meeting Tessa for a romantic getaway," she explained over the phone. "I told him I was going to visit my sister in New York, gave him the perfect opportunity for a weekend affair. He's already booked the room." "What about Tessa?" "She thinks Patrick wants to have a serious conversation about their future. She's been panicking ever since HR suspended her pending their investigation. She needs him to make a commitment to prove this whole mess was worth it." "And they'll both be there at 8? Level 3, just like before, poetic justice." I arrived early and positioned myself behind the same concrete pillar where I'd hidden 2 months ago. But this time, I wasn't alone. Emily was there, along with 2 other people I hadn't expected to see. Nicole sat in her car on level 2, armed with her phone and a live Instagram account. She'd been surprisingly easy to recruit once she realized that Tessa had been lying to her for months, using their friendship as cover for the affair. Hell hath no fury like a gossip who discovers she's been left out of the loop. The other surprise was Jamie Chen, my partner from work. I'd finally told her the whole story during a quiet shift, and she'd volunteered to help with what she called the most epic revenge plot in paramedic history. Jamie was there as a witness, Someone whose testimony would be unimpeachable if things went wrong. At 8:15, Patrick's Audi pulled into the garage. He'd had it detailed since my plastic wrap incident, and it gleamed under the fluorescent lights like a silver bullet. He parked in the same spot as before and checked his phone, presumably looking for a message from Tessa. She arrived 5 minutes later, pulling up next to the Audi in her Honda. Through the windows, I could see her checking her makeup in the rearview mirror, preparing for what she thought would be a romantic evening. They got out of their cars simultaneously, and for a moment they just stood there, looking at each other across the concrete divide. Even from a distance, I could see the tension between them. This wasn't the easy intimacy I'd witnessed before. This was two people under pressure, both desperate for something the other might not be able to provide. "We need to talk," Tessa said. Her voice carried clearly in the concrete space. "That's why I'm here," Patrick replied, but he sounded wary. "About us, about what happens next." "Tessa, no, listen to me." She stepped closer to him, her voice rising. "I lost my job because of this. My marriage is over, my friends won't talk to me, and my family thinks I'm a slut. I gave up everything for you, and I need to know it meant something." Patrick ran his hand through his hair, a gesture I recognized from watching him at the gym. It was what he did when he was uncomfortable, when he wanted to be somewhere else. "It meant something," he said carefully. "But things are complicated right now. Emily knows about us. She's talking about taking half of everything in the divorce. So leave her. It's not that simple. It is exactly that simple." Tessa's voice was getting shrill now, echoing off the concrete walls. "You said you loved me. You said I was the one who got away, that being with me again made you remember who you really were." "I did say that. I meant it." "Then prove it." "Tessa, be reasonable." "Reasonable?" She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "I was reasonable for 6 years with Colin. I was the perfect wife, the supportive partner, the woman who never asked for too much or expected too much or wanted too much. And where did it get me? Married to a man who was perfectly content to let me disappear into his small, safe little life. Colin's a good guy. Colin is boring. Colin is settling. Colin is what you choose when you're too scared to go after what you really want." She was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks in black streams. "But you were supposed to be different. You were supposed to be worth the risk." Patrick looked around the garage nervously, as if he was just now realizing how exposed they were. "Maybe we should go upstairs, talk about this in private." "No." Tessa's voice was firm. "I'm tired of hiding. I'm tired of pretending. I want to know right here, right now. Are you going to leave your wife for me or not?" The silence that followed was deafening. I could see Patrick's face clearly from my hiding spot, could see the exact moment when he realized he'd made a terrible mistake. This wasn't the fun, no-strings affair he'd signed up for. This was a woman whose life had imploded, who needed him to be her salvation. "I can't," he said finally. "Can't or won't. Does it matter?" Tessa stared at him for a long moment, and I saw something fade in her eyes. The hope, the desperation, the belief that this had all been worth something, it all just drained away, leaving her empty. "You coward," she whispered. "You pathetic, selfish coward. Tessa, you ruined my life for nothing, for a few months of feeling important, feeling desired, feeling like I mattered to someone." She was screaming now, her voice bouncing off the concrete walls like gunshots. "You made me believe that what we had was real, that it was worth destroying my marriage for, and it was all just a game to you. It wasn't a game. Then what was it? What was I to you?" Patrick looked around desperately, as if searching for an escape route. You were a mistake." The words hung in the air like a final verdict. Tessa stepped backward as if she'd been slapped, her hand going to her throat. "A mistake," she repeated. "I didn't mean—" "Yes, you did." Her voice was quiet now, calm. You meant every word. That's when I stepped out from behind the pillar. Hello, Tessa. She spun around, her eyes wide with shock. Colin? What are you doing here? Watching my wife humiliate herself in a parking garage. Again. Patrick's face went white. How long have you been there? Long enough. I held up my phone, showing them the recording I'd been making. Long enough to get everything? You can't, Tessa started. Can't what? Record you in a public place? Actually, I can. I looked from her to Patrick and back again. You know what's funny? You both think you're the victims here. Patrick, you think you're trapped by circumstances, forced to choose between two women who just don't understand how complicated your life is. And Tessa, you think you're some kind of tragic heroine, a woman who sacrificed everything for love. Colin, please, but you're not victims. You're just selfish. I stepped closer, and they both backed away instinctively. You, Patrick, are a middle-aged man who wanted to feel young again, so you seduced a married woman and convinced her to throw away her life for you. And you, Tessa, are a woman who got bored with her marriage and decided that your happiness was more important than your vows, your husband's feelings, or basic human decency. That's not fair? I laughed. You want to talk about fair? Fair would have been telling me you were unhappy instead of cheating on me. Fair would have been asking for a divorce before you started screwing your ex-boyfriend. Fair would have been taking some responsibility for the choices you made instead of trying to steal everything I own. Tessa was crying again. But I felt nothing. No sympathy, no regret, no love. Just a cold satisfaction that finally, she was seeing herself clearly. I loved you, she said, just like she had in our apartment. No. You loved what I represented, security, stability, a safety net while you figured out what you really wanted, but you never loved me, because you never even bothered to know me. I turned to Patrick. And you? You think you're some kind of player, some irresistible charmer who swept her off her feet. But you're just a cliché. The ex-boyfriend who comes back to town and ruins someone's life because he can, because it makes you feel powerful. You don't know anything about me, Patrick said, but his voice was shaky. I know enough. I know you're 40 years old and still acting like you're in college. I know you're so insecure that you have to steal other men's wives to feel good about yourself. And I know that in about 5 minutes, when this video goes live on social media, everyone else is going to know it too. That's when Emily stepped out of the shadows. Hello, darling, she said to Patrick. Enjoying your romantic evening? Patrick's face went from white to gray. Emily, what are you doing here? Watching my husband reveal himself to be exactly the pathetic loser I always suspected he was. She held up her own phone. I've been recording too. Amazing what people will say when they think no one's listening. Emily, I can explain. Oh, I think you've explained enough. She looked at Tessa with clinical interest. So you're the woman who thought my husband was worth destroying your life for. How's that working out for you? Tessa said nothing, just stood there crying in the fluorescent light. Here's what's going to happen, Emily continued. I'm filing for divorce on Monday. I'm taking the house, the cars, the retirement accounts, and everything else I can get my hands on. You'll be lucky to keep the clothes on your back. You can't. Watch me. She smiled, and it was the coldest expression I'd ever seen on a human face. I'm also sending copies of these recordings to your boss, your clients, and every member of your family. By the time I'm done, you won't be able to get a job selling insurance in Omaha. She turned to Tessa. As for you, I understand you're already unemployed. Pity. But don't worry, I'm sure you'll find something eventually. Maybe retail. I hear they're always looking for people with flexible morals. That's when Nicole emerged from the stairwell, her phone held high. And I've been live streaming the whole thing, she announced cheerfully. We're up to about 300 viewers and counting. Hi, everyone. Say hi to Patrick and Tessa, Boston's most pathetic cheaters. The look of absolute horror on their faces was worth every sleepless night, every moment of doubt, every second of pain they'd put me through. "You're all insane," Patrick said, backing toward his car. "No," I said, "we're just giving you what you deserve." He fumbled for his keys, hands shaking. "This is harassment. I'm calling the police." "Go ahead," Emily said. "I'm sure they'll be very interested in the evidence we've collected. Did you know that using company resources to conduct an affair is considered theft in Massachusetts? And that lying on expense reports is fraud?" Patrick's face crumpled. He got in his car and drove away without another word, tires squealing on the concrete. Tessa stood there for another moment, looking around at the three of us like a trapped animal. Then she walked slowly to her car, got in, and drove away into the night. We watched her taillights disappear down the ramp, and then it was over. "Well," Nicole said, ending her live stream. "That was satisfying." Emily nodded. "Justice served." Jamie put her hand on my shoulder. "How do you feel?" I thought about it for a moment, standing there in the parking garage where this had all begun. I felt lighter somehow, like a weight I'd been carrying for months had finally been lifted. "Free," I said. And I was.